Welcome
Alrighty.
everybody back to the Game on Dev Squad's Beyond the Artist Stand chat, where we have individuals from the community come up and talk and give a very well presentation about something that they know really well and understand, and just kind of want to give back to the community. Today we have Younghyeon, who is an established graphic designer, who's I've worked with before in the past, who's an amazing soul, and they're about to give a little bit of the graphic design background and talk about how to utilize that stuff in your drawing every days, which is wonderful. So, without further ado, I'll pass it back to Young Yang, and you can take it over. Okay, go ahead.
Yeah. All right. I'm gonna just go to yeah. All right. Can you guys see my stream? My screen?
Yes, we can.
Okay, perfect. So yeah, my name is Youngin. I had a bachelor's in graphic design, and I've done illustration my whole life. And if you hear any jingling, that's my cat. All right. And so there we go. So first off, usually when I start off a composition, I don't know if you saw it in our thumbnail, but like my compositions usually have one focus. Usually it's a character that tends to look like me. But here are some things that I like to keep in mind. Our eyes move from left to right naturally, especially in the Western world when we usually read from left to right. So when we skim a document, we go in a kind of zigzag pattern and we go in an F pattern. And this is something that I found really interesting back when I was in school for graphic design. I just wanted to make sure that all of my items are in the focal points if they can be. So if I'm making something that um, I want the eye to be directed, I always want to make sure everything flows. Hope that makes sense. All right. So then also one thing that's really powerful that's from graphic design is the use of grids. And then there's also like I know you guys know this from like art school is to have grids from like even threes and then the golden ratio right here. Can you guys see my mouse moving?
Yes, we can.
Yes, perfect. Okay, so then we these are popular, of course, in segmenting your illustrations, but then there's also make your own grid. So this is something that was pretty fun for me when I was just learning basic Swiss design, was to use grids and just make your own, and then also, figure out where your focal points are going to be. I really like maybe say this little intersection right here, which is where I'll put some important information. And then sometimes a block of color can really help to bring the eye towards something. So just, very basic stuff. I feel like these are stuff that you know subconsciously, but don't know how to put into words as artists. Um, so yeah. Now for my color choices, I actually end up sticking to something kind of like I consider calling dark pastel. Um, so either I want something to be nice and warm and pretty and fuzzy like I would with a drawing of carrot, and it's very like warm. So like, yellow and orange and white. And soft textures. So you want to use the lines and textures and the sort of like the painterly effect of what you're trying to portray. And if you have something a bit more melancholy, I would suggest, using muted but also bright, bold stuff. So some colors normally deemed as positive and lovely, you can always subvert the expectations of the colors that you choose and use like stark black or lots of lines. I really love the use of mm, kind of like really black shadows. I don't know if any of you guys have watched this artist. I think her name is Chu Draws. They do this wonderful, like, gory looking art. However, it is pastel colored with lots of black to amplify the shadows. So then, yeah, knowing the meanings and implications of your color choices can add to the story of your illustration. I chose like a pink purple-ish look for this illustration here, mostly because it was a slightly gory concept. Even though there's no true blood exactly in this, there is like flesh. Um, it is also just like it's not clean. There's hair on the floor. The shower door is grimy. And yet it is a pink. But then pink can also mean something other than girly and cutesy. It can mean flesh and gore. And you gotta remember that lots of colors mean lots of sort of things. So like with warm orange and yellow, you can make, a cute cat. But then also say like a brownish yellow could mean something completely different, like straw, or perhaps like uh, I would say almost a farm in the distance, kind of like Texas Chainsaw Massacre, where there's a lot of like countryside scenery and hillbillies doing messed up stuff. So knowing the implications of your colors and then also subverting them can really help to draw your audience into the narrative of your illustration. Now, with my illustration background, I am mostly self-taught. However, I did take a couple of classes of drawing growing up, and I loved taking my drawing one class. And as a graphic designer, you are required to take one or two fine arts classes. However, I don't. You don't get further than drawing one, and I haven't actually done a lot of like live drawings or sit-ins. However, I did learn a lot from online, so YouTube tutorials, and also I really like the drawing reference website where they put up a picture of somebody for like 5 minutes, and then the next 5 minutes come by. So it's like speed drawing live, well, not live, but speed drawing pictures of people, which I think really helped with my understanding of anatomy since I can't really seem to sit through an anatomy class when I buy them online. So I have a lot of comic influences. Lately, my strongest influence has actually been, um, like I started off like any other weeb, and I started drawing like anime and stuff like that. And I love Studio Ghibli movies. I love their watercolor background. So I used to paint a lot of watercolor as well. It is also the cheapest and easiest to buy, in my opinion, of your paints. And, like it's very easy to get started with traditional art that way. I really love whimsical and also the amount of weird details that are in things like Adventure Time. Like if you look at this poster, you see this like weird little hot dog man, and I forget his name. Was it Frederick, the heart guy? Just I love throwing in weird details towards the back, or like in this illustration with this webtoon that I absolutely love. Hasn't updated in a while, but they also use bright colors with black, which really brings out a stark contrast. Absolutely love that. You can see all the little tiny details of, they got flowers, but then they also have perfumes, and she's getting ready for a show. And it's just, I just love it. Um, so there's detail and types of detail that I use in my illustrations. So oftentimes I will use either the lack of objects that inspires the feeling of sterile or sometimes even hostile spaces. So literally just having nothing except these fish around her helps to create this feeling of loneliness and just kind of like the fish are just watching her. And then also an overabundance of objects and items induces the feeling of clutter and claustrophobia. That's why I really loved putting all these hands around the edges and then the fish in the background. Because if you take out the fish, it feels a little bit more open. It feels a little bit more okay and welcoming. But with all these different layers in here, you feel so overwhelmed, kind of like the girl in the middle. And then there's an everyday amount of items. So this is just like if you want your place to look homey or lived in, or your illustration to look kind of just like a snapshot of day-to-day life, then yeah, like a stuffed animal, or making sure the feet of the bed are seen so that way it doesn't feel like something that unnatural. So having your choice of detail, I think, really helps you in composing an illustration. You can also add your own personal touches. I think that's a huge part of being an artist is if you are making stuff for other people, I feel like you find yourself really watering down your own style. And when I first started off doing commissions and stuff, I found that my personal style, that which that person commissioned me for, really wasn't shining through because I was trying so hard to fill their expectations of what they wanted from me. And so I ended up kind of drawing in not my own style. It was very strange. It was very painterly. I thought, I was like, wow, I've never done anything like this before, but it also didn't feel like me. And one of my graphic design professors had told me, like, hey, like, you can throw your own illustration touches in there. Like, you can throw in items that you really like or just little details, because at the end of the day, you're being commissioned to do your work. You're not being commissioned to like create something completely outside of your work. And hence why, when you show them your portfolio, they know what they're getting. Uh so yeah, like in this illustration, it was kind of like, I was like, okay, cool. I really want a dragon in the sky and I really want a girl walking down a path. But then at the same time that day, I had gone to Myers and there was a cart that was on its side. And I was like, okay, yeah, I'll throw that in there because that's part of my day-to-day life. And another illustration of mine had one of these, um, I don't really remember what these are called, but these are like poles with the velvet ropes in between to kind of section off an art piece, in an art museum. But I had taken it out actually of my piece, and I was like, okay, well, I miss having that in that piece, so I'm gonna throw it in this one. Of course, there's my cat there, and this is actually like, an outfit that I would wear. I'm pretty sure I own this. And then this umbrella, I think, was inspired by like images that I had seen online. And I just kind of wanted to make it look windy, so, paper, and then this little juice box. Like, um, it just, these are parts of my character, and it adds to the story, and you can just stare at this piece and see more details as you continue to look. This also helps to retain your viewer attention, because another part of graphic design is learning to keep their attention. Excuse me. So yeah, actually, a lot of most of my illustrations are done on Procreate. However, if I'm doing graphic design work, I do my illustrations in Procreate and then I import them to Illustrator. So that way I can like clean up the edges, make sure all the lines are crisp, and also that it turns into a vector image, which means I can, resize it however I need to do for any sort of flyers or social media posts, or even just change the color. Uh, I actually don't use Photoshop very much because I find that not working in vector with a lot of digital illustrations really blurs it out, drowns it out. And I'm more comfortable with Illustrator. I don't think I've ever really been that comfortable with Photoshop. All right, so I'm going to set up my screencast. Did let's see. Let's see if I can set up this screencast. Please hold. We got it.
Nice. We can
All
see it.
right. Yay! All right, so I use this thing called A Power Mirror. I use it. You can use it in your Twitch streams. It's free, and I really enjoy it.
Can you make it full screen?
So, can I make it bright,
No, full screen. Sorry.
full screen? I wonder if. Oh yes!
Works.
Oh my
Oh,
gosh!
good.
They updated the app. Before you couldn't do that.
Well, that's
I'm
good to
so
know
glad.
now. Go ahead.
Yeah, they didn't do that last time. This is perfect. All right, so I've got a compilation of my works here, but right now I am going to pull up this one. Now this one is, I think a little bit more of a It's inspired by this video essay that I had read. I had listened to online. It was by this YouTuber who does a lot of. So I'm gonna turn on the time lapse replay so you guys can see how I got here. And mind you, a lot of my art process is me doodling the entire time, and then I settle on an idea. Um, Honestly, that's the beauty of digital art, is you can just make another layer, throw it on there, and draw a lot. And a lot of my sketchbooks before I even got exposed to digital art was just a floating head, and then the next page, another floating head, and then the next page. So I'm really grateful for digital media for this. But yeah, the video essay had actually been talking about how the contemplative moments of this character in a comic book actually spoke way more volumes than the moments where there's dialogue or action. Um, so not having so much clutter in terms of activity. Oh no, nah, that's not the right way to put it. I'd say not having as much stuff going on and your character just observing the environment that what you've put them in. I think that really helps the story really come through, and you can see how they've evolved. Okay, I'm gonna skip forward because I don't actually remember before. Oh yeah, these are outfits that I these are my outfits. All right, so moments of deep scenic contemplation. So this is actually me thumbnailing, and hopefully, yeah, there you go. So the first idea was actually this guy on the top left that was a scenery from my college. Um, and then I settled on this idea here that I had taken from a sketchbook of mine. This sketch was actually done with colored pencil originally. And I was like, okay, it'll be a girl looking into an aquarium, but there's no fish. There's no water. It's just all like flesh. Uh-huh. And so then we go from that to deciding how I want the perspective of the aquarium. Because at first I was going to do a very sterile, one point perspective, just looking straight at the glass. And then I was like, okay, how about something a little bit more dynamic than that? So of course I went back to the drawing board. I went back and I did a couple more thumbnails, and I was like, okay, this one seems a little bit more dynamic. You want the lines to guide you to the character. And then I came up with a splash pool idea, which was not it did not do anything. And then designing out my character, what I wanted them to look like, and I just kind of took that little thumbnail and I blew it all the way up, and then I started adding details. Another really cool tool I like to use is called Just Sketch Me. It's basically just a little mannequin. You can model them however you want and import them in there. So I don't know if you'll see, but yeah, you see that I imported the mannequin and I threw them in here. Now, let's see. Then, of course, I make my adjustments, and there we go. Now, nobody else in this scene actually notices anything odd with the aquarium. They're all like, oh, this is an aquarium. So, yeah, a lot of my process, it was really just sketching stuff out first and then going over it with ink, well, digital ink. And so right now I have it all in this cool Narrander pencil that I like to use a lot. But for now, oh, by the way, this app that I'm using to screencast has given me a timer. So I'm gonna have to close it and open it every now and then just to make sure it works. So here's my way of doing things. I take the visibility down pretty far. This is my base sketch. You can actually see all the different drawings I've done here. um, yeah, we also want to be able to see it. This is also inspired by me really wanting to go to the aquarium. I love aquariums. And let's see. Got the drawing guide. I don't always stick to the strict lines of the drawing guide actually. If you noticed in my the bath illustration that I did, my perspectives are all sorts of wonky. I don't really think there's any rhyme or reason to them. And I like that because it adds a little kind of like a distorting quality of it. Another thing I like to do is I like to make sure that my ink pen size stays the same. So that way, as I'm continuing to draw, I don't start to fret about the size of my brush until maybe like later, and then I just gonna go over the lines with a bigger brush later. Like I don't want to fret too hard, or else I start losing my ideas of what the process is, and then I get overwhelmed and I just stop. So yeah, and I like to just try to keep things simple as well. And I also don't mind if you guys ask questions during this portion because I feel like I'm a little bit rambling towards myself.
No, you are good. If anybody has any questions, please unmute yourself and ask.
Yeah, or just talk. I like to talk.
Prince, I think you had some pretty good thoughts. You want to kind of elaborate on them when you send chat?
Oh, did you send something in the chat? Hold on. Where is the chat?
It's the
Ah,
Beyond the Artist Stand chat.
okay, I see the chat, but I don't see anything else in there. Except new chat here, OMG, new chat box.
Oh, not that one. There's another one that's right above it. If you look
There's
in
another
the
one.
little where you clicked in to go in.
Okay, it's another one.
I mean, I can ask something is like how long is your normal process during one of your illustrations, like sketch, line, render,
So
like the whole process?
if I'm doing it all at once, I think I take a whole day. But because lately I've been, trying to be healthy about my art and not hyper focusing on one task forever and a half, then yeah, it takes like a couple, like I'll spend like a half hour to an hour, sketching out ideas, and then I'll put it away for like 7 weeks. And then I'll come back to it and be like, oh, this is a cool idea. And the thing is, like, as an artist, that self-loathing really gets to you. You're like, oh, I'm not qualified, or that like imposter syndrome kind of feeling. So if you put away your art for a long while and you come back to it, you realize it was never that bad and that you should finish it. So I find that it takes me a while to finish my pieces, but I never forget about them.
Yeah, I guess I'm the complete opposite because I have a full folder of like a work in progress,
Oh
unfinished
yeah.
works, all the way from like 2017 to now, and it's
Yeah,
terrible.
you're supposed to do it. You're supposed to be chaos. I never really thought that art was supposed to have any specific method. It is what works for you. And what works for me is not overwhelming myself. But at the same time, yeah, if you see my folder, it's a lot of pieces that were never put online. And no, and I think another thing about art is you're not obligated to make your art consumable. You can keep it to yourself because sometimes, like, I'm a poet as well. I write. But if I was trying to publish that, I would feel like I'm being naked. So I think, not all of your art has to be consumable. You have to remember that you started this all for yourself or to show off to your classmates. And if that's the case, that's totally fine too.
That's a very powerful statement, young guy. That's really
I'm
nice.
glad you like it.
It's a good one.
Yay.
Something people forget about all the time because, again, you guys are always learning in school and trying to go for that last bit of job. But remember, everybody's path is always going to be different. You never know what's going to happen. All you can do is just kind of do what is making you excited for the day and continue to move forward towards those goals that you create yourself.
Yeah, and like back in the day when I first started doing art, I drew were magical girls, and that brought me a lot of joy. And now I draw a lot of self portraits. So I think just I really don't think there's anything you're supposed to draw. Like even if you're like, oh, this is my brand, this is my style. Hold on, my screen timed out. Please disconnect from control center. Do I hit escape? Yes, I do. Disconnect. Hmm. Exit. There we are. What was I saying?
Can you reshare your screen?
Yes, I will.
Perfect.
Oh, is this screen not sharing anymore?
Yeah, it's not. It's not on the. It's just on the PowerPoint right now.
Oh, that's fine. That's probably just how I'm gonna have to do it. Hold on. Loading.
hmm If anything, Young Gang, I would love for you to kind of have a conversation about that piece that you showed off with the all the pieces that are flying out of your body in a way.
Oh yes, by all means,
I
I
think that'd be
will.
kind of fun to have you guys kind of like just kind of talk about it a little bit, and I think that would be a good way to end it.
Yeah, that'd be great. Honestly, I was like, how far do I go with this demo?
Yeah.
All right, so actually, this is the layout of my bathroom. Let's see if I have the picture up anywhere. Nope, I'm not opening my photos on this. I'm not on live screen. Well, basically, yeah, this is the layout of my bathroom. There is, let me just make a new layer and use white, or no, blue. So now you can see where I'm looking. Um, so basically, my bathroom has this terrible, terrible, terrible sliding doors. I absolutely hate them. They start filling up with mold towards like the bottom here, and there's no way to clean that out properly. And it was just like part of me was just really frustrated about the shower doors. And I was like, you know what? I'm gonna draw this grime. Like I can clean tile, it's fine, but the grime was really getting to me. And I also like to watch TV while I'm taking a bath, and in order to do so, you have to have the door wide open, which means my cat, he loves to just like come in there, be very concerned. So honestly, this is a real shot of my life. I am not floating apart in a million pieces, but when I am like driving or doing mundane tasks like chopping vegetables or um watching YouTube, even like really mundane things, I start to like drift off towards my thoughts. Um and like that's something that I think some people would call rumination or racing thoughts, but I wouldn't say that they're fast-paced thoughts, which is why I had them just floating instead of like shooting out of my body like bullets. Um and one thing I really like to do after I've made my, so let's see, that's video 10 last years. So one thing I really like to do is that, oh yeah, so you can see my actual bathroom here. And as you go, you kind of see that, well, first of all, I love doing tedious line art. So drawing a bunch of squares next to each other like this part, or drawing a bunch of lines next to each other, like for my Inktober's. I hate, my hand hates it, my brain loves it. I love the little tedious details. Um, they bring joy to my mortal flesh. And at first, it started off, I was like, okay, cool. My boyfriend walks by. He's like, oh my gosh, why is she missing her face? Um, it's not even like gory horror, but I can understand the horror. Um, so then as I continued, I was like, okay, well, what makes this more realistic? What makes this more lived in? And I was like, oh, it's the grime, the soap scum, the weird parts of mold that you can't get out because you live in a rental. Um, and then I was like, okay. And then you also just see like that I have my toothbrush here, like an old one. I try to use to like wipe away the grime. It doesn't work. And you have little items that you use, your toiletries. If you're drawing a bathroom, you don't want to forget that, or else it looks sterile and unlived in. This looks almost too lived in because of my hair on the floor and all that jazz that comes with having your own space to take care of. Then you see my color choices. At first, I took colors originally from the photo, and then I was like, oh, it kind of, ooh, I don't like it. So then I came up and I watched this tutorial by J. Debel, or I forget how to say her name, J. Debbie Bell. And basically they said make it black and white, and then go into your settings and change what the light color is and what your dark color is. And then I realized I really liked it having this purple, orange, blueness to it. It looked sickening. I loved the vibe. So I went with it. And doing so, I just, grabbed the color dropped stuff because that's what I love about doing line art. Is I love being able to just drop the colors in Procreate. It's so easy. But you also have to make sure your line art is like crisp and clean. And no open spaces unless you want them to be there. I also like to have a layer underneath it so that way any sort of spots that don't get filled in with like a paint bucket, I can just color underneath, like I do with these little lines in between the tiles. Alright. So as we continue on with this piece, I also loved adding these like dark portions because I really loved how the underside of the sink counter was black. So I was like, oh, I gotta add more of that. So adding some more black details, I kind of wish I added even more. I feel like it would have made an even higher contrast. But then I was worried that it would blend into the outline of the door and my cat. So I was like, okay, I don't want to deal with that. So yeah, I actually there's a lot of like discrepancies too. Like if you really notice it, the lines here, they're kind of fish-eyed, but not exactly because these lines here are straight and they follow a perspective that goes all the way up there. These lines do not follow that point. So kind of mixing up your perspectives as an illustrator, you can just kind of mix stuff up as you go. And to make things make sense, you follow follow your brain. So if you look at these lines, they are not following these lines. And these lines are all kind of following, but it's in stark contrast to here. And I think that actually adds a little bit of separation in the realms of this piece. Like you have an inside realm, which is within the bath, and then you have the outside realm, which is outside the bath. And I think it adds a little bit of whimsical narrative. Yeah.
That's awesome, Younghyeon. Thank you very much. Does anybody have any questions? If you have any questions, please unmute or just kind of ask them if you want to.
Or just chat.
Go ahead again. Sorry.
I said, or just chat.
Or chat.
I hope it made sense.
Yeah, no, totally makes
And I
sense.
hope this isn't stuff that you guys have already known and you've known forever, but I think this is just stuff I've learned.
Even
How
if
did
it
you
is-
come up with the? Oh, my bad.
Yes.
No, go ahead, Stan. Go ahead, Stan.
How did you come up with the color scheme?
The color scheme, so if you look, okay, actually, I'm gonna show it to you right now. A little quick demo. Nope, screen size. So you take like a gray. Let's see, painting, round brush, gray. Oh, you know what? Even bigger, gray. There's a white right here, and then you got a black. So here you have a bunch of colors, and then what I do is I go into, which one was it? Gradient map? Yes. So then, once you have the gradient map, you can change it up. You can pick your own, like, so this actually helps me to choose colors in terms of light and dark, because you see that my white has now turned into this drastic pink, and then my gray has turned into a very muted pink. Or, you can go with something more like this, which looks like, one of those like neutral color palettes that you would see on like Google stock stuff. Yeah. You really can go for something really unique, or you can custom and make your own. So say I can make this one red, and then this color I can make yellow. No, I mean there's already something like that. Yeah, I like that one. And then if you find a color combination you really like, so I like this muted red and this muted green, you can just save it. Ta-da! What do I call it? Christmas.
Nice. I like it.
So this was the easiest way that I did coloring. But other than that, what I do is I go by the theme of the piece. This one, if you look at the piece closely, there's like organs inside here, right? So it's like she's escaping a monster that's like trying to digest her. If there's organs inside, I want the inside to be a light pink because that's what you would look like if you're cut open and light shown inside of it. And this whole museum itself is part of a beast. So I was like, okay, I want it to look, creature-like. Now with this piece, I really kind of wish I chose different colors. But I'm so used to doing muted colors that I didn't realize that I had not stayed kind of true to the source. I wish these butterflies of her wings were more like butterflies and less like leaves. I was like, shoot, this would have looked so cool if it was like more like those floating butterflies. And then, let's see. I'm still trying to figure out the colors of this piece. Now, see, this is another example of me not looking at something for more than 7 weeks. I actually have been working on this piece for about a year and a half, and I'm just not entirely sure how to go about everything because I want everything to be so colorful because that's what the coral reef looks like. But again, this is my thing about attention to detail. This is my cat as a fish. This is my and then this is my other cat as a fish. Oh, here we are again. I got disconnected, but it's okay. And we are returned. Not yet. Don't worry. And back. Yay. But yeah, little tiny details. I learned that anemone can swim, so that was interesting. Uh, there's Terry Pratchett's world on a turtle's back. And then other ideas like, oh wow, octopus can run, and starfish kind of look like people if you stand them up a certain way. This was inspired by the SpongeBob movie where there's a lady offering you a burger in a giant fish's mouth. Um, so really, I love nauseating amounts of detail that you look at it different times and you miss something. You miss something from before. So yeah, like a lot of my pieces are really just a lot of unfinished things or mundane things. I don't believe I've ever posted this, but it's just like, oh, I wanted to make a cute little scene with a character holding a cat. Um, this was one that I found myself way too overwhelmed with. Um, and I realized I couldn't draw all those buildings, and I got super overwhelmed, and I ended up going with something more like this. So, you change your ideas a lot, and you sometimes come up with an idea, and you're like, this is great, this is so cool. And then you're like, I don't know what to put in the rest of it. So there's just a lot that you can. Oh, and then this one was like for a magical girl group, like not a contest, but like a art submission. And I love designing characters. So really just take your passions and integrate them in there. As again, like I love drawing little tiny lines next to each other. I love these weird shapes. You don't have to make sense with your art, but as you can see, like the amount of I think I've posted about 10% of all this art. Everything else is really just experimental or stuff I was doodling.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Younghyeon.
And then you guys are probably gonna have to go soon.
Yeah, no, so I guess I have one question for you before we end this.
Yeah.
What kind of advice would you give to people who are in school right now learning about illustration art or any other kind of art passion? What's something that you wish you could have told yourself back in the day?
I think I wish I told myself to not be so embarrassed about my art. A lot of times when you're in art school, you're like, oh, I don't want them to know that I started off by drawing anime. Like, who cares? um, you're there just like everybody else is. Everybody else probably did something embarrassing to start off their hobbies. Um, it really isn't anything all that deep. It's not that crazy. You are there to learn. You're not there to become a sudden professional as soon as you leave the field. Because to be honest, I am an artist, by night and sometimes during the day. Sometimes I'm asked to do some graphic design work, but for the most part, I have to make ends meet, and that doesn't always mean that I'm doing art 24/7 because guess what? That would burn me the fuck out. Um, I started thinking that I was going to go into graphic design and do it as a profession. And instead, I went into it and now do it as like per commission. When I used to work at a design firm, I was so anxious, burnt out, and scared because I was worried that my stuff would not be up to par. And because I don't know if I'm exactly sensitive or defensive about my art, but especially about pieces that I had not even put my own personal touch on. I just really wanted it by deadline. I was starting to get really anxious about whether or not I was good enough. Um, or like I need to get this done on time. So I just didn't have my top tier quality work. And then they were like, we need your top quality work and we need a harsh deadline. And that just was really killing me. So, like your art school life, you really enjoy it, really explore. Don't be embarrassed about yourself. Please, by all means, go into all sorts of different niches that you might have wanted to explore before. Uh, but don't go into it being like, I'm gonna leave this art school and I'm gonna work at a game company. And I'm like, that's great. I hope you guys can do that. But there needs to be a level of exploration that if you don't do during school, you will end up forced to doing it after school. You won't know what you want, and then you're gonna be like, wow, I wonder what I'm supposed to do. And then you try to go towards what you really want, and then you're like, oh shit, that's not exactly how I wanted to do things. So if you don't explore during your school years, you're gonna have to explore some other time. At the end of the day, you're gonna be forced to explore no matter what. So really just like, don't be so hard on yourselves. Don't be so embarrassed. By all means, be as weird and as wacky as you can be, because by goodness, you are in an art school. I never got to go to art school. I think that's the best part. You guys can be wacky and creative and be surrounded by creative people. Be inspired by the people around you.